Hello, folks, and welcome to our game with myself, Shane Stapleton, as ever, joined by Michael Verney. Big weekend of GAA coming, and to be fair, Michael, we're in the thick of a big GAA week anyway, because we had the Fitzgibbon Cup quarterfinals on yesterday. We had the Sigerson Cup semi-finals tonight as well. So it's all go for a lot of these players at the moment. They're playing sort of weekend, Wednesday, weekend, Thursday, whatever it might be. They're flat to the mat, a lot of these lads.
Yeah, it was funny to hear Gerard O'Connor talking after the UL game last night, basically saying like we're talking out with these lads on a Wednesday and we're all real tight knit, and then we're clipping the heads off each other at the weekend, and then we come back in Monday and we're going to a meeting and we're all pally again or whatever. It's a mad kind of situation because a lot of them are, brushing shoulders very, very regularly through college and obviously through county duty as well. But just on the Fitzgibbon, some absolutely cracking games last night. I saw the bulk of the I would call IT Carlow versus Waterford IT or SETU or whatever it's called. It looked like Carlow were kind of not in control at half time, but it looked like the potential to kick on. And Waterford were the ones that kicked on. Like Pádraig Fitzgerald got some absolutely outrageous scores, and Patrick Fitzgerald as well. It was kind of like it was the two Fitzgeralds at one end, it was the two Nolans at the other end, Chris and John. That was a Ryco game, and then I thought UL were in a hell of a lot of trouble against UCC. Looked in big trouble even the early stage of the second half, and then it was kind of like Limerick almost, in the sense that they didn't panic. They brought on a pretty decent sub bench, or released a pretty decent few guys from the sub bench, and they were the ones that kicked on, and they won pulling up in the end by 8.
Yeah, I mean, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with the Fitz this morning because I was looking at UL against UCC, and I was like, okay, there's 6 Limerick starters for UL, there's 11 Cork starters for UCC, and I was like, I just wonder across the entire quarterfinals which counties have been represented the most. And of course, once you start, you can't stop. And there was 149 players who played yesterday in the quarterfinals. I'm not going to talk about unused substitutes, but this is just the 8 teams that got through across the 4 games. And like, viewers, get your comments in and let us know. I mean, obviously, a lot of teams were knocked out in the group stages. So therefore, like, for example, UCD would have some Dublin players. So therefore, they're not involved. And a lot of the Dublin lads would go to college there. And like, some other counties were knocked out in the group stages. So therefore, that would hit that representation of their county. But just looking at it here, right, so this is the Fitzgibbon Cup quarterfinal representation. Cork had 33 players represented. Galway next with 24. Tipperary 23, Limerick 17, Waterford 14, Clare 13, Kilkenny 6. That was one that stood out to me. Laois 5, Carlow 4, Wexford 4, Offaly 4, and Kerry 2. What do you make of that? And the representation across the board there.
Very interesting. Just what you're saying. I know there's no Dublin player obviously involved, and obviously you'd say that no Dublin colleges at this stage, and that's a large reason why. But to me, the more players you have been represented in the knockout stages, the better. You could have like that's the real kind of cream. Like, that's showing that they're among the best.
Did we lose you there for a second, Michael? I can't quite hear Michael there, so I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Liam Mac 01 says Kilkenny would have a lot involved with DCU and Maynooth. And I'll just bring up the second image that I worked on as well. As you can imagine, this didn't just take 2 minutes, but it was the representation within each county. So Cork, as I said, they had 33 players, which is the most. They're very heavily represented. We'll have John Meyler on the show, and he's over the Cork Miners, so he might tell us what's coming down the track with them. But just the fact that like 28 of their 33 players came from the 2 teams within the city. So to some degree, that makes total sense. You'd nearly expect that, and traditionally it's the way it's been. But there's a huge concentration within their county. Galway somewhat the same, because of course 19 of them are with NUIG, and of the 20 players they used on Wednesday, only 1 was from outside the county, and that was Charlie Mitchell. Then Tipperary 23 from 6 teams. So there's a bit more of a spread there. Mary I and TUS Midwest 8 and 9, 3 from UCC I should say, and then 1 each with UL, MTU Cork, and Setu Carlow. Limerick 17 from 5 teams, and I presume if Cott O'Neill was still available, he'd be an extra one there also. Waterford 14 from 4 teams, 10 of those with Setu Waterford. Clare, just 3 teams have Clare representation, so that's 5 with UL, 4 with Mary I, and 4 with TUS Midwest. The Kilkenny one, Michael, I think you're back there. Like, 6 from 4 teams, one with UL, one UCC, Setu Carlow and MTU Cork with 2 apiece. That's somewhat surprising. Now, we haven't kind of broken it down who's a starter and who's coming on as a sub. There's a bit of a spread of that across all the teams. But it is so interesting when you look at those breakdowns. I'll bring it back up if you want me to bring it up again.
Yeah, just definitely very worrying, I would say, from a Kilkenny point of view, Shane. And obviously the fact that they won, an under-20 All-Ireland 2 years ago, which would suggest that, there should be a right scraw of those lads in third or fourth year of college, or even, doing apprenticeships or whatever and coming into a college. Very, very low numbers at this stage of the competition, especially in comparison to, the other counties that are at the, at the elite end competing for All-Ireland titles. Was it 33 Cork? A fair whack from Tipperary, 17 from Limerick. They're big numbers. 23 from Tipperary, 17 from Limerick, 14 Waterford, 13 Clare. Like Kilkenny are, like with due respect, they're down in line pretty much with Laois, Carlow, Wexford, Offaly, which I would say would be pretty worrying from their point of view. And I know they'd have a good few going to some of the Dublin colleges and maybe a handful up in Maynooth as well. But it's one thing having them competing. It's another thing having them competing at the real knockout stage. And like I remember when we were playing. It's funny, when we were playing Fitzgibbon back in the day, there were Kilkenny representatives in every college in the last 8 nearly. You'd have UCC, you'd have UL, you'd have UCD. On the flip of that, I was in UL, and I think we only had one Limerick starter, Seamus Hickey, and I think there would have been very few others even on the squad. And it's mad, like there's 6 starters now, and obviously that's a lot to do with the academy work or whatever, but it's a fair sign of the landscape at third level is a fair sign of what the landscape at inter-county is going to be in a few years. So I would say from a Cork, Tipp and Limerick, and even from a Clare kind of point of view as well, very, very encouraging. From a Kilkenny point of view, you'd have to say very worrying. No point in saying any different. I'm just even looking at it from an Offaly point of view, even just to see the handful of lads. We wouldn't have had anyone really up until Killian Sampson with UL and maybe Dara Matter and Eamon Cleary the last couple of years. We would have struggled for the guts of a decade to have anybody involved in the business end. And as a result of that, the supply lines to the senior county team were very, very poor. But signs would suggest that they're getting a little more kind of prosperous now. But Kilkenny, like you'd imagine, Kilkenny would be bringing through a hell of a lot of more underage players than what the Fitzgibbon Cup panels there suggest.
Would you imagine in 2 years that Offaly number would shoot up a nice bit because of what's happening underage?
Oh yeah, big time. Like if you look at Colin Spain, Donald Shirley will be playing Fitzgibbon for DCU. Yeah. Adam Screeney will be playing it for UL, along with say Killian Martin, Conor Doyle, Ben Meyler from my own club. That's only a couple off the top of my head. I'd be hoping at the latter stage of Fitzgibbon that we'd be in double figures, which would be huge. But for a county like Kilkenny to have that small a number, and even like one of the 6 is Owen Cody, who's well established now at this stage and has been in college, with due respect, has been in college a fair length of time now at this stage. The Carlow boys seem to really get the most out of it. Chris Nolan's there a hell of a long time too.
Christ almighty. Well, we've got comments in. Look, we know that this is a snapshot and there could be some very good players from any of these counties that went out at the group stages, and it doesn't mean that they won't be brilliant players for their county. So look, it's just a bit of a snapshot, but it's interesting nonetheless. Liam Mac 01 says Kilkenny would have a lot involved with DCU and Maynooth. Hurling 1234 says UL and UCC teams are stacked. Robbie Cotter's on Cork panel and came on late on. Keane Gavin on the Clare subs bench and only came on 2. That was a county standard game. UCC missed easy chances early on. Is that why DCU and Maynooth were so bad? Asked River Power. Ian Donovan goes on to mention Grode O'Connor of Tipperary. He's ripping it up the past 3 years in Fitzgibbon. Form never lies. Did you want to jump in there, Mike?
No, I tell you what, on the UCC UL game, there was probably a period there of about 5 minutes where UCC had to make hay, and they probably didn't. Shane Barrett went through. It was a decent shot, but it was within the range of Conor Hanley-Clark to get his hurl to it, and he stopped it. And then Barrett had a penalty a couple of minutes later, and he blazed it over. They needed to hit the net. Like for the hurling they done in the first half, they probably need to be up by 6 or 7 at half time, because they did dominate things. And UL were kind of playing maybe a bit more individually than collectively. They got in at half time, sorted out a hell of a lot of things. And as I said earlier, they won by 8 pulling up. But UCC needs to have a bigger buffer than that. considering the amount of damage they'd done in that first half.
Yeah, okay. And SSRI says that's Westmeath's lowest representation in a long time. They always had 3 or 4 playing Fitzgibbon. I'm not sure if there were many playing in the group stages. I know there was 1 or 2 involved with the UCD team, for example, and I actually missed their game last week because I was coaching elsewhere, but they may have had 1 or 2 represented there. Just a few more comments in between viewers here as well. Colin Lyons says, there's a reason Kilkenny have such an ageing squad at inter-county. The conveyor belt has been slow for a while now. That under-20 team that has a big Cathal O'Neill-sized asterisk beside it. So obviously that's because he had played for the senior team in 2022, so he was precluded from playing for the under-20s in the All-Ireland, which was a bit of a joke because we saw the likes of Wexford, they were down Oisin Pepper and so on. Tiernan Killeen and wasn't it Gavin Lee couldn't play for Galway. So it scuppered the whole competition. You know, it's not Kilkenny's fault they went on and won it, but it did really dilute the entire competition.
Yeah, there was a ropey Hawkeye as well with Conor Hanley Clark, as in there was no Hawkeye, and the point was given when it's probably not 100% conclusive that it was over the bar as well. But I know Limerick would have felt fairly aggrieved by that. But yeah, just the absence of Limerick representation, the lack of a Dublin team even in the quarterfinals. There would have been a huge Dublin numbers. They're probably double figures, maybe more than double figures, if they had made it to the knockout stages, but they didn't, and they've probably been struggling at Fitzgibbon level the last couple of years. But I believe they have a Messiah involved with the freshers, so that's going to change in a couple of years.
Yeah, no, we had a good win last night, and actually, now that there's Westmeath represented, like I'd imagine David Williams, who played for Westmeath at the weekend and scored 7 points against Galway, he'd certainly be, in the mix to be playing with the Fitz team next year. As you know, in terms of Dublin, then Diarmuid O'Dooling was really good last night. So he, assuming that he stays injury free, you could see him on a Fitz team next year for sure. So, like as I said, it is just a bit of a snapshot. It doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't talent coming, but like if that continues over 3, 4, 5 year period, it does really tell you something. Like,
oh, you're under big pressure. You're under big pressure, Shane. Like that's probably Limerick's biggest representation, I would say, at Fitzgibbon level since that great final where there was 7 or 8 lads that are now the backbone. It was UL and Mary I won after extra time, and that basically those lads have backboned Limerick now, and positive signs to say that. Shane O'Brien obviously involved with Mary I, and you have all the lads involved with UL. Like you would say there's a heap of potential Limerick senior starters over the next couple of years there. It's not guys that you just think are very good underage players. It's lads that you think there's a fair chance that Adam English, Shane O'Brien, Patrick O'Donovan, and that's just a couple off the top of my head, will start for Limerick over the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. Anyone who's been particularly ripping it up in the Fitz, do you reckon, in recent weeks?
Well, he was mentioned there already, and he's ripping it up with Tipperary as well. But Gerard O'Connor was brilliant last night, and it was brilliant for Tipperary at the weekend. He's, of all the players, he probably has one of the busiest schedules at the minute. And this is probably what you were bemoaning earlier about Limerick lads been taken off during games. He's generally played nearly all of the games for both county and college. So you just hope that doesn't catch up on any stage, because it's not as if he's playing an inside role where he's just making sharp runs. Like, he's covering serious ground where he's like, there was times last night where he was back around his own 21. Like, he's putting up as much mileage, I'd say, as anyone between the two competitions at the minute. So just to make sure that you just want to make sure that he gets through it kind of without picking up any sort of an injury. Sorry, Conor Heaney says Fergal O'Connor as well. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that you think could be, real good players for the Limerick senior team over the next couple of years. So very, very good sign for them, as it is a good sign for a couple of others as well.
Yeah, and just a few more comments. PL74 says, have Kilkenny a problem progressing players from winning All-Ireland with Kieran's every second year to the senior team? Peter McGarry, Tipp was very good last night, says Hurling 1, 2, 3, 4. Traumspieler, a ropey Hawkeye, love it. Don't think there's any other type of Hawkeye. 36 and counting, obviously Kilkenny man. The Kilkenny County Board haven't got an effing clue what they're at. So you might would you pad out that? Give us a bit more insight into what you're talking about there. Because Mike Doyle is asking the same question. What makes you say that? Richard Hogan says, actually not concerned about Kilkenny not having too many Fitzgibbon players. Mark Rogers didn't really stand out last night, in my opinion. Gerard O'Connor, Adam English, TJ Brennan were best for UL last night. O'Connor shouldn't play this weekend, says Hurling 1234. It will catch him also mentally getting up for all these games.
I'd say Mark Rogers shouldn't play as well because he looked a bit lethargic last night. And if he plays Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday, if he plays against Waterford, I just think it's real kind of Russian roulette with lads, isn't it? And then all of a sudden you're out for 6 weeks. They miss a fifth semi-final and they miss the rest of the league. And he really kind of needs to be minded to some extent with Tony Kelly out as well. Like, they need him on the pitch for the league to be getting, he's not even hitting frees for his college. So they need him to be getting all this exposure against good teams in pressurized situations. So I definitely would be minding him this weekend.
Yeah, and 36 and counting says, no ambition, facilities. This is about Kilkenny County Board, and he's suggesting they haven't a clue. Facilities at Dunmore, way behind other counties. Number of coaches, way less than other counties. Management at different age groups, picking players from their own clubs that are not up to it. That's probably something that you'd hear across the board. He's only picking his own there or whatever, like.
I don't think it's any. I don't think you hear it as much now, which is a good thing. It's prehistoric enough now for that type of thing to be going on at development squad level. That's it, obviously, if it is going on. But you talk to people on the ground in Kilkenny, and they would say that eyes were taken off, the future at different stages. But there's a man that has his eyes firmly on the future. The Cork minor hurling manager, John Meyler. John, how are you?
Morning. How are you, lads? You well?
Good.
All good.
John, we were just talking here. I'll just put it up on screen for you. But the representation of the different counties from the quarterfinals of the Fitzgibbon the other day. Look, it may mean something, it may not. It's just a snapshot. But Cork there with 33 players represented, Galway 24, Tipp 23. We're looking at Kilkenny with 6 players represented in the Fitz quarterfinals. This is lads who either started or came on out of 149 that played. We just thought it was quite interesting to see how strong Cork are, and that Kilkenny would have so few. Would you read too much into that, or is it just a snapshot in 1 week of Fitzgibbon?
Yeah, I think it's just 1 week of Fitzgibbon. Like all the Cork hurlers, underage hurlers either go to MTU or they go to UCC. It's in their back door really, so it's just a continuation where you're saying there are 6 Kilkenny fellas. They have to go to Dublin, they have to go to Galway, Limerick, Waterford, wherever. There was a lot of them in Carlow as well in the last few years. But look, it's just a snapshot of one particular year. That's all it is really.
John, how much stock would you have placed in the Fitzgibbon when you were Cork manager in particular only a few years ago? And how tricky is that kind of balancing act of letting lads play with their college, but also making sure that they're with you quite a bit and that you get to see them and kind of get to coach them the way you want to coach them?
Yeah, the Fitzgibbon is probably 2 levels below senior inter-county league at the moment, and probably 3 or 4 below, championship. And what you're doing is you're letting players play with the college, and you're hoping they'll come back to you, like Robert Downey and those. You're hoping they'll come back to you on Sunday for the league game, hoping that they're not injured, they're not tired. Kieran Joyce was centre back last night for MTU up in Galway, and they were well beaten out. So that can deflate a fella as well, coming back into an inter-county setup. So there are a lot of issues to consider, but basically you want your key players like Joyce, Downey and those to come back in, uninjured and ready for road and ready to fit in with you. That's basically it.
And do you find that there's much confrontation between county managers and college managers? Because obviously both want the players for the matches. They'd like them for training, meetings, stuff like that. It can be.
No, there's not really. In my time, there was no confrontation. The county players played with Cork or trained with Cork, and that was really it in a nutshell. And as I mentioned there to you a second ago, it's the key players like Downey. Joyce now is a critical player for Cork at the moment in terms of number 6. So you let him play with MPU, but he's training with Cork. But you want him coming back now tonight at training before the Kilkenny match on Saturday, and fresh, ready to go Saturday night, and that's basically it in a nutshell.
And just in terms of Cork and the representation they have, like you said, there's the 2 city colleges there that are getting deep into the competition all the time. Like, do you sense that there's more and more quality coming with Cork? There's those under 20 titles 3 and 4 years, but do you feel there's even more coming with what you're seeing, from minor and beneath that?
Yeah, definitely there's more quality coming, but the key point, and I always make this point, is getting those quality players, as you say, into playing for their county at senior championship level. You can win all the All-Irelands that you want at minor and under 21, but your failure or your success in bringing through those. And if you go back and look at Limerick in 17 when they beat us in the Munster final by 2 points, like the quality of the players that came out of that minor under 21 team in 2017 is now the backbone of Limerick. And, that Gillan and those came out of it, Cian Lynch, Kyle Hayes, those and they've gone on to win a few All-Ireland medals. So that's the critical point, Shane. Underage now is about bringing players through to senior inter-county championship level, and that's the important thing.
Mm. What did you make of Cork against Clare last weekend?
What did I make of them? They got two early goals, and I said, here we go. But then there was a little bit of dithering around the middle third, which is, the most congested part of any GAA field at the moment. And Cork turned over too many scores in that area. And Limerick or Clare got about 115 off turnovers. And you cannot afford to turn over the ball in the middle third at the moment. And then it was Clare's, after the start of the second half, like Clare really thundered into it and got a grip in the game. And they went 6-7 points up at one stage during the second half and kind of kept it at bay, even though Cork got back to 2 points. But then there was a fantastic goal by Shane Moore. He went up the field and he wasn't picked up. He made the run through the middle over on the far side and a great goal. But it's early days yet, but letting the ball move quicker, I think, is the key point there. I think that's it. And there's a few Cork players that come back into that setup there last Sunday, and they'll strengthen the team up now for Saturday night here.
Did you sense there was anything different about the team though? Because like on the Monday show or Tuesday we did it, myself and Michael were like, I don't know what's different about this Cork team. It's kind of losing a match the same way as we've seen for the last 15 years.
Well, that was the point down here, not letting the ball into the forwards quick enough, and the turnovers in the middle of the field, and you're turning ball over. I thought Clare were more ruthless, really. Like they were more efficient around the middle third, and they broke and they got balls in and a couple of good scores, really. And it was that third quarter that they turned on the Clare really came after Cork against the wind, that kind of turned the game over, really, and Ennis is a difficult place to go and play on a Sunday afternoon, and there's always a wind there whichever way it's blowing it. But I would expect a response on Saturday night. I would expect a few more players back, get Fitzy back in, Tim back in. There's a few fellas missing, really, like that will strengthen that up.
John, just a quick one. That was probably a bit of a lull after half time, and that was where Clare did a lot of damage.
Yeah.
As a manager, would you ever talk to like your team, or would you have something in place where, lads, if we're under pressure here for a couple of minutes, we need to do X, Y, and Z, or we need to stem the bleeding, like people would say about maybe Nicky Quaid and his contact lens or whatever, or other little things. Like, would there be any little things you would suggest? Because like 5 minutes, if you're offered for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes in a county game now, that could be game over.
What you'd say to fellas, look, if we concede 2 points within 30 seconds, that somebody goes down at one end of the field, and as you say, Nicky Quaid has made an art out of it just by his contact lens or his helmet is off or whatever. But you have to stop the game there and don't concede 5, 6, 1-4, 1-5 suddenly in 5 minutes, as you say, and then the game is over, and then you're chasing, like, where were we? And that's what happened last Sunday. Like, the Cork were chasing the game in the third quarter, really, and Clare got the upper hand and got more scores in there, and that kind of settled them then down. And then when they went 6-7 up, then they just settled for point, and Cork were chasing the game then.
You need your leaders in that sort of a scenario, don't you? Because it can run away from you very, very quickly.
Yeah, well, you need savvy. You need somebody that's aware of what's happening in the game, and the people on the sideline need to be aware of what's happening as well. And I never worked under Billy Morgan, but he used to have 4 quarters or thirds or whatever, 3 10s in the first half, 10, 10, 10. then you go the second half, and what are we doing? So, but you need to go through those, you know what I mean, constantly, and reset and repeat the message, and you know, get guys that are, you know, you hear this word all the time nowadays about resetting, but resetting is about, you know, getting your shape right, getting your shape back in again, and not conceding another point or another goal. And Cork just done that in the third quarter, and that was, you know, that's where the game was won. I know it was won in terms of turnovers as well, the clear one, but it's a critical element there.
You know, last year, John, there was a couple of games where, you know, and you had said this was a few years ago about Cork losing tight games, and you felt that ever since the, you know, the impasses, the strikes, whatever, that Cork had got into a habit of losing close games. But last year, a couple of times in the league, I thought they did quite well. The Wexford one really stood out. They came from behind and won a tight one. And I felt like, okay, there's a bit of a change here with this Cork team. Like, what do you want to see from the Cork team this year? Like, what do you want to see this weekend against what will be a fairly physical Kilkenny team as always?
I would just like to see more urgency and more directness, you know, and that's the way I would prefer to play. That, you know, that there's a more urgency about everybody, where, you know, because it's so critical now, the preparation before Munster Championship. The Munster Championship is so competitive with the 5 or the 4 games. With the 5 teams that are equal, you're trying to get into the top 3 just to get out of Munster, but you must set the framework of being more eager, more aggressive, more direct, I think, and that's the key point. And as you said there, look, Kilkenny are coming down on Saturday night, and I expect the 3 O'Loughlin Gales fellas to be back: Mikey Butler, Lawler, and Paddy Deegan. And you know, I was surprised that they weren't playing against Wexford last week, and you know, I'd expect them to come back in and to strengthen up. And I expect Cork to be stronger as well. And, you know, you'll have a big crowd here in the park on Saturday night. So I expect the Cork crowd to get behind Cork as well.
Just on that, Shane, as well, I just listened to the audio of Derek Ling after the Wexford game, and there was a fair bit of pain in his voice because they left points behind in Nolan Park. Cork are pointless at the moment, so I think you're going to have, as well as that, you have 2 teams that are not guaranteed to meet each other in championships, so they can really take a good hop off each other here. And you're not showing anything really to anybody. You're not showing anything to anyone that you're going to be playing later in the year. So, geez, I'd be expecting a fairly tasty one down in the park. Hey, John, have you got your head around the name change, or do you use the name change, or is it still always the park to you?
No, I give due respect. It's Super Value Park Kiev, and you know, it's fantastic to get the €3 million for 10 years sponsorship, and I think it's very positive, and it'll always be known really as the park. Like, but you know what I mean. It's no Super Value Park, and congrats to the Cork County Board for getting that finance in place. And you know, I'd say a lot of other counties are jealous of Cork's ability to bring in 3 million in terms of sponsorship and that. So, fair dues to the Kevin O'Donovan and the Cork County Board. They deserve great credit for that.
Well, what do you expect from Kilkenny this year? Like the All-Ireland 2022?
They've lost 2 All-Irelands in the last 2 years. And if I was sitting here with you and saying Kilkenny have lost 2, Cody would be pulling his hair out. And you know that better than I do. And that's not acceptable in Kilkenny, that they haven't won, you know, an All-Ireland in the last 2. Yes, they're up against Limerick, but you know, they've had opportunities to push on in those 2 games, and they didn't do that. You know, looking at them against Wexford last Sunday, you know, they were competitive, but they, you know, Wexford have been turning over Kilkenny in the last couple of years in tight matches as well. And you know, they did a few bad wides in the second half there. Derek was giving out about the number of wides that they had. So, as you say, they're not going to meet in the championship. So I think I'll expect 2 strong teams on Saturday night, and I expect it to be competitive and hard and physical. That's it in a nutshell.
And Martin Furlong asked the question of you here, John. What do you think your home county Wexford so far this year? Should we be optimistic in Wexford with the amount of good young players coming through?
Yeah, I watched the Wexford Kilkenny game, and I was delighted the way they were playing. They were moving the ball quickly, looked very athletic, and you know, I could see Rossi and Frank's mark on, especially Frank's mark on it. The coach, like if you look at him with Ballygunner and what he was doing with Ballygunner and how they were playing, and then how Wexford, I thought Wexford were moving the ball quicker. There was a few fine scores, and if you can just get 1 or 2 more players back for Wexford, but just keep up the the athleticism, keep up the speed, you know, and taking their scores. And look, they've been competing with Kilkenny, and if they can do that, then it'll be more consistent in the National Hurling League. And the Leinster Championship is not as competitive as the Munster Championship, where they may have a little bit, you know, a few more weeks to kind of iron out things that are not right or whatever. Where you don't get that down here, you've got to hit the ground running here in the Munster Championship, and your first game is critical.
Can I just ask you, John? So this is obviously Keith's first year at Wexford. Like, when you come in first year, do you really need to hit the ground running? Realistically, it's a lot different than your second year, where you have a fair bit of knowledge under your belt, and you can it's all focused towards championship. I just seeing how athletic I think Wexford look and how quickly they're moving. You're kind of thinking he's definitely trying to hit the ground running here. Will they be 100% come championship, or will they? You know what I mean? Like, he's definitely trying to get the momentum and the enthusiasm kind of back in Wexford, but that can have an effect later in the year as well, obviously.
Yeah, but look, it's your first year, and you've been sitting on the sidelines for the previous 2 years, and you think you know what's gone wrong, and you think you can correct it. So Rossi has come in. I just thought that they were more athletic. They will look quicker. They look sharper. Maybe they have a good bit of work done. Franks will definitely add in terms of coaching, and Rossi is in there. You know, he's had success in that before, and he would have worked with a lot of the younger players, so he'll trust them in his first year. He doesn't have much to lose in terms of your first year of management, but you know, he'll expect to be in the three to get out of Leinster to get into the All-Ireland series. So I expect him to be pushing on, really.
I know he's a debut senior intercounty manager, but they probably couldn't have got a better fella, in the sense of he was in with Davy from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. He was with the 20s and 22 and 23. Like, he should know the scene inside out, and it looks like he does by all accounts.
Well, he does, yeah, and he was a good hurler himself. He was an excellent defender. I was there in 7 and 8, and he was a very good defender. Suffered a few injuries and things like that. So I'd say he's seen it all, looked at different ways, looked at working with Davy Fitz, you know, with the under-20s, saw what talent was there. See, could that talent then, and I've said this earlier to you, could that talent then step up to inter-county level? So he's introduced a few new fellas last Sunday in terms of the under-20. But can they make the jump then to in the Leinster Championship? And, you know, it's competitive there, Galway, Kilkenny, Wexford, Dublin. It's going to be really competitive there, you know, 3 out of that 4 or 5 situation, you know.
Of the managers who are in year 2, I suppose Liam Cahill, Pat Ryan, Davy Fitz, I feel like there's somebody else. But, like, is it one of those things, you know, you had your chance to see who everybody is. Now we need something from you, this, you know, to produce something, to deliver something, John?
Yeah, but you have to deliver. Jesus, I got 2 years down here, and that's it. And you know what I mean, if you don't deliver, and we the very
brother.
But like, everybody looks at managers now, and if they don't get results, they're out. And you know, if you're not getting results, like Brian Lohan is there 5 years. And you need results to get momentum behind you, to get people to believe in you. That's the critical element. People that will trust you, and that's where you need results. And you know, you as you mentioned, those 4 managers who are in their second year now, they need results, because other than that, where are we going? We're spending a fortune on preparing inter-county teams, and we're not getting results. You know that if you win, you then look at getting sponsorship. You know, so it's a vicious circle in a way. So it's important that those managers get results. Cal has got to do something in Tipp, you know what I mean? And Davy Fitz, Waterford haven't won a Munster Championship match. So, you know, you have to get results. Pat Ryan has to get results here as well. And Derek Ling has to get results, because Kilkenny won't accept losing All-Ireland finals. And that's a matter of fact.
Can I just ask you, John, what's the pressure like on an inter-county manager?
24/7, and it's worse. It's getting more. It's getting worse because of the, you know, Monday morning outcomes, the analysis of all the games that, you know what I mean, that Cork had 115 in turnovers. That's out there now. Everybody can read it, whereas before it wouldn't have been out there. Now there's an awful lot more detail. There's an awful lot more data that you can look at. And you know what I mean, people are going down to the park. Cork have won 3 out of the last 4 under 20 Irelands. You have the pressures on you to get the right team set up to win matches, and the pressure is enormous. It's grand for me. I'm only involved with the minors, but I'm retired. But you know, if you have, you know, depending on your circumstances, depending on your job, depending on your position, there's an awful lot of pressure and there's an awful lot of time, and it's 24/7. You guys in the media want us every day of the week, so if it's not you, you know, if it's not you, to somebody else, and you know what I mean. You Saturday there now, the match is at 7:30. You're preparing at 3 o'clock. You're meeting up at 4 o'clock. You're going down to the park. The match is over at 9. The media want you. Then you've got to, you know, come in Sunday morning, go through analysis, go through meetings. It's non-stop. It's competitive, but you know, you get the results, you'll be rewarded.
2 quick questions. Did you sleep well as Cork manager? And did a result affect what you did over the next couple of days, as in where you might go?
Yeah, I always sleep well. But, you know, look, that's where your family come in. That's where your family comes in. Your wife, my wife and my daughter and my son, that's where the 3 of them come in. I'm not a great loser, to be honest. I hate losing. I can't accept it. And sometimes you turn on yourself and say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? I should have done. And then everyone else said, why didn't you see this? Like, you're stupid, you're thick. You know, why did, like 6 points up against Limerick in 18, why did you bring a sweeper on? You know, and everybody sees it, but you're the one that doesn't see it. Like, you know, you can sit here, analyze matches, look at matches, and see where you went wrong in post. And a lot of that puts pressure on you, and you know that even people still come to me about 2018 that why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And that's difficult. You know, you remember your defeats more than your victories. That's it in a nutshell. But I'm glad, or I'm happy. I have my wife is here and my daughter's in Wexford. My young fella's in England, and like they helped me enormously, because then, you know, especially my young fella, because he was playing professional football and he would understand what you're going through. You know what I mean? But then he had a game on Saturday, but he might have another game Wednesday. So you forget about that game. Whereas the GA, you have a whole month. Well, not really anymore, but you know, you might have 2-3 weeks then to ponder about it. Like, you know what I mean? So Cork going into the game Saturday, you know, against Kilkenny, like, you know, both of them will be unhappy with their games last week against Clare and Wexford, respectively. They'll want to win now and win. So you can imagine the bus going home to Kilkenny on Saturday night, or the bus here in Cork going home, and you know, somebody's not going to win. So you're going to be under pressure Sunday morning then as well. Like, and the Kilkenny people or the Cork Examiner are going to be giving out about you, and that's it in a nutshell. You have to be able to manage that, but you need a good environment around you as well. You need a good culture around you. You need the right people around you that take that pressure off you. And I trust the people, you know, that I had Froggy with me, Donald O'Mahony, they were excellent, and I had Dougie Howlett in as well. And you trust those people, and they take weight off a manager, and you have to delegate. There's more delegation now. The manager just stands there, and you have a fellow warming up, you have an S&C, you have a physio, you have a doctor, you have a coach, you have a goalie coach. You know, you have 100 guys now in the management setup, and they take the weight off you, and getting really, really good people is critical.
And that would have been a long 7 months for Pat Ryan in between, like the Limerick game at the end of Munster last year, which Cork were very, very close all the way to last week. You know, just negotiating that nigh on 7 months, that must be just feel like it's forever.
Yeah, and you're going to matches and you're looking, and will this fella do, will that fella do, what should we do better? You need to look at your management setup. You know, am I getting the right S&C advice? Am I getting the right fitness advice? Am I getting the right physio, the right doctor? Everything, are we doing the stats right? Are we doing this right? Are we doing that right? What can we improve on? And, you know, I mean, I need a good goalie coach, or puckouts now are a critical element in hurling, really vital. You know, am I getting the best out of my puckouts from the goalie? Free taking, everything is critical. You know, you need a psychologist as well. You bring people like that in to talk to individuals, to talk to groups. Have you a good leader group within that? So you're working on all that when everyone else is not thinking about hurling, and you're trying to make that better for next year. And then, you're looking at players, and as you said there, the Cork under-20s won last year. So you're kind of saying, I need to bring through 3 or 4 out of those. And you look at Ben Cunningham, then he does his hamstring then last week. So, that's a setback then as well, that you'd hope he would step up then and be one of the wing forwards that you need. And you're looking at all of those issues, and that again, you're working with a team of people in the background.
And actually, I was chatting to one of the Cork under-20 panel from last year, who's telling me that Ben Cunningham is the only guy in the forward line for the 20s that's not still underage again this year.
Yeah.
So it's probably a bit soon to expect some of them to step up. But John, in terms of like the teams that we're seeing this year, outside of Limerick, who'll obviously be pushing, like who do you think could have a big year this year?
Look, it's competitive in Munster, Shane. Look, you have 5 teams in Munster. I think whoever gets, the first match in April, whoever gets off the ground really, really well, they'll be hoping to get off the ground. I think Clare left a bit behind them last year. I think they're looking at them last Sunday, then they looked that little bit sharper and whatever. I think they left something behind them last year. Tipperary left something behind, need to go. Waterford, Waterford need to do something. And I think Cork, were very competitive in terms of the Munster Championship. Lost out in a couple of games by a point or whatever. And we're desperately unlucky not to get into the Munster, the Munster 3. So they'll feel then they left something behind. And Limerick will be Limerick. And Limerick is a matter of, the drive for 5 or whatever way you want to pronounce it, how they're going to manage that. Everyone's going to be saying it's 5 All-Irelands, no one's ever done it and all this, but he had a brand new full forward line last Sunday. They had an easy victory in that, but I think Limerick will be well focused, will drive on. Galway haven't done anything either in terms of success, and Shefflin is there 2 or 3 years. He needs to really come out of there with a win. And Derek Ling, as you said there, is in his 2nd year and has to push on. Dublin, I really don't know. I really don't know. I don't know why they continue playing their matches in Parnell Park. I just can't understand that. I really don't. They'd be better off in Croke Park in the bigger pitch. But look, it's all to play for, but I'm telling you, Munster is going to be competitive.
No. You put a lot of noses out of joint last year, John, when you said your 3 for Munster, and you were unequivocal about it and very assertive about it, and there was no debate about which 3 were going to come out. I know it's early, but do you have it? Do you have 3 in your head that are going to come out Munster this year?
You put me on the spot last year. I got 2 out of 3 right, and I got the wrong C. I said Cork and it was Clare, so I was only out one letter. That's all. It was a CO or a CL. No, look, I said what I said, and looking at the moment, I'm not going to comment to you and set myself up again or something like that. Maybe if you turn the camera off or turn the sound off, but you know what I mean. Look, it's competitive, but I said to you last year that Waterford wouldn't come out, and that Waterford and Clare wouldn't come out. Cork, Tipp, and Limerick would come out. Waterford have to do something. It's as simple as that. And Clare had a very iffy Munster Championship last year, and Lohan has to do something now in his 5th year, I think, and that's the bottom line. Because as I keep saying, like, it's about results nowadays, and that's what it is. And come back to me in September, and I'll tell you who am I.
You're right though about Clare though. Tony Kelly's probably, he needs to get an All-Ireland on the board again very soon if it's going to happen. John Conlon is in his 30s, these are the keystone players. They need to make it happen now.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And I was at a Harty Cup match there in the last few weeks, and Tony was walking around with a boot on his foot. So that has still to settle. And Conlon's had a tough Munster Championship there with Clonlara and that, and he was excellent. He was excellent. So look, they need to step up again this year, and they had a great chance against Limerick last year and that. So it's competitive, but the other counties, Shane, have to step up as well. So it's fantastic for a hurling supporter, really, that you're going to get the quality of games that you're going to get in Munster, and the competitiveness of them is critical.
Yeah. Just one on Waterford, lads, right? Because I'm going to play devil's advocate with Waterford, right? And I was, critical of them last year. But if you take the performance in the first game and the performance in the last game, if they're able to be more consistent across the 4 games, like there's huge improvements being made. I know they
threw the kitchen sink at Limerick in the first game last year. They went everything in, all in, and they put everything into that game against Limerick, that first game. And then they didn't come then for the next 2 games. And as you said there, but the final game then, and I'm not 100% sure now, did it really, really matter in the end? But,
Well, I tell you something, John, it mattered to Tipp because it denied him a Munster final.
Yeah, but it to Waterford, I meant, but it's getting consistency across. I think that's Limerick's kind of buzz really over the last few years. They're kind of consistent, and they get purple patches in games like the old Kilkenny team where they put in enormous scores and that. Like even looking at last Sunday, 36 points was, I was even saying that to the young lads last night, like 36 points, like that's excellent, and they're in that space. Like, but look, Waterford have to do something this year.
Is there any hope that this Limerick team, like they've players coming, so they're obviously going nowhere, but the group that's been there for so long, at some stage is this run and the amount of battles that they've gone on, and they've had injuries, like is it ever going to catch up with them, John, or do you think they can be like the Dublin footballers before, keep eking out?
But sure, I think they're like the Dublin footballers in a way. They're very calm and like you never hear or see Declan Hannon and these fellas, Morrissey or those. You never hear or see them. It's a bit like Cluxton in the goal. You don't even know he's there. And like everyone said last year, Declan Hannon is gone for the All-Ireland. Like Limerick are finished. Like. And then the midfielder goes in centre-back and there doesn't seem to be a problem. And it's the style that they play that everyone seems to understand each position. It's a bit like Pep with Man City. Like, he's playing centre backs like John Stones and those. He's playing those in midfield. Like, so why is he playing there? So I think Limerick are very flexible in terms of the way they can play and the players that they can move in. Then when the full back was injured, and then they put Dan Morrissey back full back, like Dan Morrissey wing back in full back. Like now Downey could do that for Cork as well. I couldn't see Mark Coleman going in there, but Limerick are very flexible in terms of they all understand the way that they play and they just slot in, slot out, and I think the only problem with Limerick will be Limerick themselves if they can manage themselves, and I think that's Kylie's job in that environment that he has created around them, really, to manage themselves and to keep the show on the road.
Like you mentioned Cork there. Could you, do you have any idea what the starting 15 will be this year? And Mark Coleman, someone you mentioned, and Robert Downey, and Owen Downey looks a really good prospect. Like, could you come close to picking their 15?
I could, yeah.
Do you think so? Yeah? Enlighten us, please.
Oh, take the floor.
No, I'm not taking any floor. I'm not boosting your ratings. I saw the RTE ratings today; they're gone up. But no, look, Cork will probably be more or less the same, and you're maybe going to throw in one or two players and that. The Patrick Collins is going to be in goal. We know that. Joyce is going to be centre back. You know that. Maggie is going to be playing. That's 3 or 4. I leave you at it then, but that's the setup. That's the way it's going to be. Clare are going to be much the same. Most counties are going to be much the same, and hopefully that you're able to get one or two players through the league now in the next couple of weeks to slot in, and then that they will stand up then to the championship pressure, and that's ultimately it.
And is Patrick Collins a certainty, John, this year? I like Saunderson now, and I like what I saw him last year. I like what bits I've seen him this year, even at college level as well.
Yeah, but UCC were well beaten last night by UL. No, that's not his fault or anything like that. But he's going to get a go in the league, and you're going to have to see that then. But then there's different gravy, Michael, then going into the Munster Championship compared to a league game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday night. As Nash said to me one day, he said, John, the pressure's on me, fine, but I'm pucking the ball into the sun in Thurles, like, and Christ, there's 40,000 people roaring at me. Do you know what I mean? And you have to get those things right. And I go back there to the management setup, like that your goalie coach is critical. You know, the temperament of a goalie, pucking the ball out. It has to be right, because if there's one or two turnovers, the ball's banged over the bar. So, like the Collins, I had him in there in 17 and 18, so I'd have no problem with him.
Can I ask you
Isn't
about...
it funny? It's just last one, Shane. Sorry, you mentioned about the temperament of a keeper. Isn't it funny when you say that hurling is so blood and thunder and the adrenaline is up? Like, the keeper has to be nearly distant from all that in some ways, isn't he? In some way, because
he has to be calm that when the ball goes into the back of the net or over the bar, he doesn't puck it out straight to a Kilkenny fella who pucks it back over the bar. So the restart of a game is much like you'll see it on Sunday night with the NFL final. The restart of a game of hurling now is probably more important. It's the most important puck in any minute of the game, because it's by restarting you either gain possession or you lose possession. And if you gain possession, you probably are going to score. But if you lose possession or lose a turnover, the opposition are going to score. So the goalie then becomes more critical in terms of his puck out strategy. Where do I go, when I'm under pressure? Who do I go to? So you go to the likes of Seamus Harnedy and that who are going to catch a ball for you. You go to Kyle Hayes. You go to those guys that 9 out of 10 they're going to come up with the goods. TJ Reid will catch the ball.
Here's an interesting one for you. Like in the last two games that I've done stats on, which was the Dublin Galway Walsh Cup semi-final and Dublin Tipp actually the other day.
Yeah.
Both these games were at Parnell Park. Whether that makes a difference or not, I just mentioned
it does.
There was 80 puckouts in the Dublin Tipp game the other day. There was 78 in the Dublin Galway. So that'll tell you there's the guts of 80 opportunities to set up for puckouts throughout the game.
Yeah.
That's something you can really practice, John, whether it's with your goalie or the outfield players.
Yeah.
It's 80 opportunities.
But you have to work on that scenario. You have to work on your puckouts, and you have to work on the opposition puckouts. And where am I going to go to get the possession to break the opposition half-back line? You have to get the ball to get the opposition half-back line to turn. And that's ultimately it. And Limerick have that to a T, that they're able to get it out and to get the shooters in then from 60, 70 yards to be able to put the ball over the bar. But it's puckouts are critical. Restart. Watch the Super Bowl on Sunday night, and you'll see if you don't get your 10 yards within three, what's the word I'm missing?
snaps.
Three snaps, 3 downs, and you have to get your 10 yards definitely by the third, and it's difficult, and it looks quite simple, but like pucking the ball out in Thurles or Limerick against the sun, against the wind, and they're baying for blood, like, do you know what I mean? And then the Limerick half forward line are going backwards. Where do you go?
Hey, Chiefs or 49ers on Sunday, John?
Chiefs.
Yeah, Mahomes. Basically.
Yeah, Mahomes, I would say. I used to be a fan of the 49ers when Jerry Rice and those. That was when probably 40 years ago or 30 years ago when the NFL came to Ireland, Chicago Bears, the fridge and all those,
Michael's lost here.
No,
sorry, Michael, I lost you there.
Jerry Rice has done signings at sports memorabilia place a couple of times when I've been over in Vegas, and the fridge is one of the few from 30 or 40 years ago that I would know about now, to be fair.
Walter Perry.
That's the one. John, just the last one you were saying there about the keepers and the puckouts, and this is what I wonder about Cork, and will it be any different this year? That bit of kind of ignorance and doggedness that's needed under a high ball, particularly under your own puckouts.
Yeah.
Like, who do you think, outside of Seamus Harnedy, who we know what he can do, who are the other lads that can, at the end of the day, when Limerick push up or put a woeful press on you and someone needs to put their hand up and win a ball, who are those lads, particularly in the half-hour line, that you see doing that?
I was hoping to see Ben Cunningham there, but hopefully in the league there. But with a hamstring problem, it's going to be difficult. But there's two ways there's more than two ways of receiving puckouts. You either catch it, but the other thing as well, Michael, is that you get the ball to ground or you break the ball. But then you need your ruckers. Like you go back with the football, you go back to Paul Galvin. Paul Galvin made an art out of picking up breaking ball. Like, he never won a kick out, I'd say, in his life, you know, aerially. He never caught it aerial. Like, Harnedy is brilliant that way. He's fantastic at that. But when you puck it out and it breaks, you need you know, the kind of the grave diggers then in there picking up the bits and pieces. And that's often more important than just catching the ball aerially, because a lot of teams will break the ball down left or right. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to catch the ball, but you have to win the breaking ball as well. Get the ball to ground, get in around it, and win it.
Yeah, but like Cork have 3 brilliant forwards and they've more than that. But like Horgan, Conor Lehane, and Seamus Hardy, they're all in their 30s. They're all brilliant players in their own right and have been. But surely Cork can't go and get out of Munster this year if all 3 of them are starting 4 games.
Look, that's up to Pat and the management to pick whatever he thinks is the best forwards to go with. And you know that I would hope that Ben Cunningham would be there. Definitely, he's where to go. William Buckley is not in the panel, which surprised me, and he was excellent last night for UCC against UL up in Limerick. So, you know, look, we'll see. We'll see in the course of the championship, and Luke Meade and those. It's a challenge of bringing in new players, but that's what Pat will have to do. Pat will have to try those, and hopefully the Shane Barrett and those and Connolly and those can step up. Jack O'Connor, and you know, and maybe you might need 2 players for each position, Shane, and you know, you play them a bit like the rugby, and you take them off after 40, and then you bring in fresh legs, and you know, so
in the past you've managed against your home county, and I'm just wondering, Eamon O'Shea, his son, I should say, not his father, is on the Galway team at the moment, Donal O'Shea.
Yeah.
Like, is it an odd one coming back and coach, like Galway are going to Tipperary this weekend? Is it an odd one going back to your own, you know, home venue with another team?
No, they probably kicked you out. They probably kicked you out in the first. They didn't want you. Look, we all that day is gone years ago. You know, we're all there, and we're coaching, we're helping to coach, and you know what I mean. I've practically been in Kerry for 30 years, and I've been everywhere in that. And you just get on with it, and you coach. And people want you to coach, and you're bringing the game of hurling around the place, and you know, you're doing your best, and that's it. And you know.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, O'Shea is definitely an interesting one, Shano, because like, this is no kind of like Mickey Hart going back to Tyrone or anything. I think I can't, any Tipp person I've spoken to only has good things to say about him, from his spell as manager when they nearly won All Ireland, and obviously he was coach when they won in 10 and stopped the 5 in a row, and he was coach again in 2019. And he's not an outsider in Galway either. He's been living in Galway for like half of his life. He's been professor of economics in University of Galway for years. He's
still
involved
a Tipperary man, though.
That's true, yeah. No, that's true, yeah. He's been involved with Salty and Knocknacarry. He was involved with that senior development squad last year. He's been involved in underage development squads. He knows the scene very, very well. Going to be fascinating to see what he brings to the table, because what he brought to the table with some of those Tipp teams, like the use of space, the speed at which they played, the speed at which they got ball inside, and how a couple of lads in particular, I probably think Alar and Seamus Callan, nearly grew a foot under his kind of management or his coaching. And I'm fascinated to see who the Galway boys are potentially that you'll see, oh Jesus, O'Shea has his fingerprints all over them, and they've kind of just turned their game inside out. Whether that's a Conor Whelan and he's even more of a focal point than he has been in the past, or the likes of a Jason Flynn or a Tom Monaghan or whoever. I think it's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, well, look, he's there for a purpose. He's there for a reason, and he's there to pick them up, and Henry will have seen that. So, look, he needs to do something, and the pressure's on. The pressure's on to deliver. That's it.
Yeah, John, you've been great with your time. Just a final thing before we let you go. What players are you excited to watch now in the next couple of weeks and months?
I'm excited to watch the Cork Miners, how they'll develop. I'm involved here. Jesus, I'm involved here at the Miners. Look, and I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to seeing those play. I'm looking forward to see, can those Cork under 20 fellas that have won the All Ireland, Mullins, I was hoping Ben would come and play. Brian Hayes. I like William Buckley, even though he's not in the panel. I'd like to see those, and I'd like to see those coming through. I saw Harry Shine, I think, was playing for Kilkenny last week. Saw him playing there in a few All-Ireland colleges finals. I'd like to see the Wexford young fellas now, getting the lease of life from Rossi, and that they step up to the plate with Leachin and a few of the senior players really, and do something down in Wexford as well. So look, it's a positive summer, I think, Shane. If you were a hurling spectator, and I was saying last week, I think that we're not promoting hurling enough. First, I saw the two club semi-finals, and I saw the club final in the last few weeks, and I said, like, there should be more made of it, because it's a fantastic game, but we're not promoting it enough. You know what I mean? We're not promoting it. We're not marketing. I was at the Munster rugby match Saturday night, and there was more marketing really. When Munster got a try, or the Crusaders got a try, there was a couple of shots of fire went up in the air behind the goal. I can imagine if that happened now in the G in Thurles or in Super Value Park in Key, what would happen? But
John, look, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully we'll tempt John again in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I'll boost your ratings. All right.
That's what we're looking for.
I'll knock your
Cheers,
ratings
John.
down. Yeah, God bless, lads. God bless.
Good man.
Always brilliant to have John on. Jeez, he's an encyclopedia of hurling, isn't he?
Yeah, but sure, even there, he said he's been in Kerry for the last 30 years, coaching and that. Like, he's been here, there, and everywhere. And it's like that's the sort of thing that never leaves you. That's he knows many things, but that's one of the things that he just knows intrinsically and will always do it. I'd say till he can do it no more. And he's obviously back with the underage now in Cork as well. So it'll be fascinating. We'll keep an eye on how they progress throughout the year as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Harry Shine. He actually got a goal late on against us in Freshers last night, which made it squeaky bum time. So yeah, I'm interested to see if he makes progress with Kilkenny soon enough. Trounspeeder says rugby needs those gimmicks though, because it's a dreadful sport. Right.
Yeah, I don't. That's not the part. That's not the part I think we need to jazz up with hurling. It's just trying to make sure that it's played more around the country, and it just on that point as well. There's, I saw Connacht GAA put out a list of coaching courses from January to April of this year, and Galway is the only one where any hurling coaching is going on. So Galway have 11 coaching workshops, which is great. I think it's nearly half and half in Galway. There's not one coaching workshop between Mayo, Sligo, Roscommon and Leitrim. There's 34 football coaching courses going on across those 4 counties, and not one hurling one. So to me, like, that's how we need to market hurling more. Need to make sure that it's played more around the country, and not just been played, among the counties that it's always been played in. And that's really disappointing, and that's very worrying, because although like big strides have been made in Mayo and Sligo in particular in the last couple of years, like that suggests that it's more going on within the clubs than within the counties, or it's not an edict been sent down by the counties. So it would be great to see more kind of coaching courses, hurling coaching courses going on within those 4 counties.
And we kind of mentioned Eamon O'Shea up against his native county. Davy Fitz is going to be against his native county, and of course Brian Lohan. So it's Davy versus Lohan part 10 or whatever at this
God
stage.
only knows.
It continues to be interesting though. You're always just going along thinking, I wonder will there be an old incident on the sideline, get them both fired up, and it should be an interesting game in its own right, but it's hard not to be kind of thinking, will something kick off here today?
Yeah, I think history would tell you that it's rare for something to kick off with either of them involved. It's usually a third party that does something or says something maybe to stir it up a bit. I remember being in, was it Thurles last year? No, I wasn't there actually. I just remember listening back to the audio after. It was after Waterford played Clare in the championship, and Davy was just someone, he reckoned that somebody from the extended Clare backroom team was kind of sniggering at him or laughing at him, and he was kind of nearly pointing down at him or whatever. But that's there between when these two kind of collide. But I'd say as both need to get results. They both won last weekend, but for Waterford, this would probably put one foot in Division 1A for next year if they are able to get a result. Caleb Lyons is only just back and he's playing. Stephen Bennett is obviously back as well. And I mentioned earlier in the show, like, I couldn't have been more impressed with the two Fitzgeralds for for Waterford last night in the Fitzgibbon. Like Pádraig Fitzgerald was like he's relatively small and diminutive, like, but he was unmarkable. I think he ended up.
Yeah, I think we might have lost Michael there for a second. Have we lost you, Michael? Okay, I think we have. Just I might as well mention now as well that the Sigerson Cup semi-finals are on tonight. It's going to be University of Ulster against Maynooth University. So UCD, they're also up against UL, that's on in Carlow. So for UL, they were beaten finalists last year and they survived a tough match against DCU in the last round. Paul Keeney, Frank Irwin, Kieran Downs, they're all effective for UL. Inniskeen is where the University of Ulster clash with University of Maynooth. That's going to be on. So the Canavan brothers, they were excellent for University of Ulster last time out. That was against TUD. And, but Maynooth, they beat Queens in their match. Owen Frayne, who's been very good for Meath so far this year, he got the crucial goal that day out. Maynooth also have Derek Irwin. So those games are going to be very much... they're going to be tasty encounters as well. Richard Hogan says the 3 Watford Fitzgeralds, they were all good last night. I'm not sure where exactly Verney's gone to, but I'll just go through some of the other fixtures on my own just for now, and hopefully he'll jump back in. Keep the comments coming as well, because we're always looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Wexford are against Offaly this weekend, and Wexford, they drew with Kilkenny the first day out. And an encouraging thing for them would be that Matthew O'Hanlon, Dermot O'Keefe, Conor MacDonald, they were all absent, and Wexford were still drawing last week. Now, this weekend, what are you hoping to see from Offaly? We saw the red card last week. We saw the sloppy goals being conceded. Offaly go down to Slaney side. Like, what are you looking for? What's the bare minimum that you want from the team this weekend?
Well, I tell you what, like particularly with Wexford results last year, whatever about their their Walsh Cup campaign and even the Kilkenny performance last weekend, I would imagine Johnny Kelly would have put a ring around the first 2 games of league and said, like, if we're going to get something out of league, it's probably going to be either out of Waterford or out of Wexford. And I can remember I think it was under Eamon Kelly's reign, Offaly going down to Wexford, getting a result there in the league. It's not a million miles ago, but of the Leinster teams that are ahead of us, you wouldn't say Wexford are a million miles ahead of us. Just the sloppiness that you will not get away with in Division 1 hurling or even at Joe McDonagh Cup level. You'd be hoping some of that would be kind of stamped out after last week. Like, you can't have a scenario where Stephen Bennett stands over free, misses the pickup, and there's still a goal opportunity on. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't even a goal opportunity on when he stood up to take the free. It's just kind of switching off and been a bit lackadaisical. But they got themselves back into the game, having been 7 down at half-time and conceding 3 first-half goals. It was the sending off that kind of basically undercut any chance they had of maybe kicking on and maybe potentially getting a result out of it. So it's that sort of consistency of effort over the course of the 70 minutes. I expect it to be competitive enough, Shane. Wexford are flying at the minute, obviously. You obviously have the element of David Franks going back, facing off against his native county as well, which would be an interesting little aside. He gave over a decade to Offaly and was definitely one of the best within that generation. Nominated for an All-Star a couple of times, won a few Railway Cups as well. So that'll be an interesting kind of facet to it. I'm expecting a bit more of the same. Some good stuff against Waterford last weekend, and you'll be hoping that they can build on that this weekend. And I would say that this is one of the games that they would have targeted beforehand. Some of the other games could be a bit out of reach, but
yeah, I suppose it's just showing composure and being switched on, because Offaly need more and more exposure to top level hurling, but they have to embrace it too and do all those things that the top teams, they do the dark arts, but they're also switched on all the time. So that's a big thing I'd like to see from them this weekend, because we do need Offaly to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, it's funny, Shane, like the dark arts and that is not pulling a stroke. Like that's not the dark arts now. Like the dark arts has just been really cute and been set up for every scenario, particularly from a place ball or a set play that the other team have. You just set yourself up in the scenario where no matter what happens here, we're not going. Our goal is probably not going to be penetrated. Owen Cattle will be under pressure to play this weekend, which is obviously going to be a big loss as well. Because they really do kind of need everybody. And maybe I was chatting to somebody during the week there. Maybe with the kind of size demographic of Wexford, it would be, if they're going to throw Adam Screeney in the game, maybe this would be the sort of game where he's not going to be coming up against, a 6'2", 15-stone cornerback. Maybe this would be a chance for him to come up against maybe even a couple of players that he played against at under 20 level last year. But again, I think we're looking at conditions outside, and you see Turles racing call off today, and you see just how heavy it is. Like, there's been some fall of rain the last while, so smaller, diminutive players aren't exactly going to thrive at this time of the year, you'd imagine.
Yeah, and John, and we had a comment there from Crack of the Ash saying, did you see Barry Kelly trying to revive the crusade against the hand pass again? And like, he's been part of the standing committee on the playing rules, and he's been part of a group that's reported a 40% increase in the number of hand passes in hurling at intercounty level over the past 5 years. And last season there was an average around 100 per game. And he was saying, in the past it wasn't a big factor because there's 10 or 15 a game. He was talking about how there was, I think 75% of hand passes he felt were throws. And then I just read out a quote as well. He was on RT. He said, the other stat is that 95% of hand passes are retained by a team. So hurling is very much a possession game. I know we change, but hurling was never meant to be a game all about possession. Football has gone so possession-based that people have switched off looking at games in droves. The possession game is not a good spectacle. I think if the rule did change, and Conor O'Donovan's motion, the one where you can't hand pass with the, basically you have to do a switch hand pass or basically flick it off the stick or whatever. Or he said it would make the game easier on referees. There would be no doubt about the ability to make a clear strike. At the moment, we're asking refs to do a job that is impossible. Now, look, we saw this in the trials during the Fresher Hurling League. And the trouble for me is, hurling is not a game that should be rucks either, and you are guaranteed a host of rucks if you bring in that rule. Now, and I do get it, like the hand passes do create a real possession game. We're seeing teams move the ball around, short pass, then we're going to try and strike it long once we're out in a bit of open country. But I don't feel that this hand pass rule, for the reasons that we've gone through a load of times, I think the trouble is teams are just completely condensing into the middle. We need to create rules that reward pushing up. And we talked with John there a while ago about how there's 80 puckouts a game, which basically means 1 a minute. If you basically every single minute encourage teams or had rules that had teams pressing up, i.e. every puckout, 3 players on each team has to be inside the 21 at that top end of the pitch. Therefore, you're going to have more pressing up, which will stretch the field, which would probably, I think, lead to less of those ruck situations. And look, the hand passes are going to be there, but forcing unnatural movements and awkward-looking hand passes in tight traffic, for me, it just doesn't work. It's not the right solution.
You're forcing guys to do a skill that they've never practiced before, because you're not never practiced, but they've practiced very little because it's not a practical skill to practice. The thing about the hand passes as well, and you kind of nailed it there, you hand pass. There might be a couple of hand passes, but what's the end result of the hand pass?
You want to get
a good long strike, isn't it? Usually to create space to get a strike inside. So I don't think it's not a case where we're hand passing the ball across the field or anything like that. Where in football, also you threw out a number there. He said, was it 100 hand passes per game? That's not bad, is it? That's 1.5 hand passes per minute.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what game. Like, you have to think about what game are we looking for at the end of all of this. Do we want a game where teams are just blasting it aimlessly up and down the field and just finding the sweeper time after time? Or do we want to work the ball out a little bit so that we can try and bypass? Like, there's no getting around it. Like, the sport has been influenced by other sports. Every sport is influencing each other, and possession is king. It's a hard thing to win. You don't want to give it away stupidly. So I just don't know how you're going to avoid this. No matter what you do, like, teams will just end up doing like mini brick flicks, like, just constantly. It's not going to really change the game. It'll just end up with more rucks, I think.
Yeah, as our RM99 says here, he says, why do people want to slow the game down? If you take away the hand pass, every player will just adapt and use the brick flick instead. Also, like, you definitely have seen it the last couple of years, the referees are definitely clamping down on what they see as obvious hand passes. And I don't know if you're the same, but when you're sitting in a press box where it happens and you think, oh, that's not I'm not saying it's 100% a throw, but it looks like a throw. And if it looks like a throw, call it. And I think referees are calling them a hell of a lot more. And there's far less, protest about them, because players know now that if they don't make it more obvious, that there is a chance that they will be pulled. Plus as well, like I don't know, like, if you're holding on to possession, a couple of hand passes, but if the end result is, you know, a lovely ball inside or a lovely stick pass 30 or 40 yards to hand, I don't know. I like watching that. There's nothing I hated more as a player, particularly playing the inside line, when you see maybe a pass or two, and then there's this lovely diagonal ball, you know, in front of you. That's a nightmare to defend. That's essentially what a team is trying to do. They're trying to create the situation where they can give the most advantageous ball possible to the inside line. That's the end goal of a pass, really, isn't it? But it's to give it to someone in a better position to deliver that killer ball, or go for a long range score or whatever it is. I wouldn't be. I don't really see the need to tinker that much with it. Yeah, would it make referees' lives a bit easier? Yeah, probably would. Have there been any like really controversial throwing decisions like that? I don't think we're at that stage at all to be making a decision or a change to the game that would change the game kind of so radically.
Hugh Paddy says, side note, love how brick flick is now a mainstream term. Wheeler says, hand pass is practiced incessantly by Kinnerk anyway, Michael. Check out his dissertation on possession-based games. It's hugely based on hand pass. Limerick are leading and others are following. Yeah, it's heading that way and it's not going to change.
Yeah, but it's a couple of hand passes, probably in triangles, to create someone, Darragh O'Donovan, in between the two lines of midfield to give a lovely diagonal ball inside. It's not like, lads, it's never a hand. I put it to you this way: it's never a hand pass for the sake of a hand pass. It's a hand pass to try and create a better situation to deliver a ball in. So no way would I be taking it away.
Yeah, River Power says, take away the hand pass. They're trying to take away the throw. It's against throwing, not hand passing. Let's get that bit right, will we? In terms of like some of the games where there might be a bit of a revenge on the menu this weekend, I think Waterford, because they lost by 12 points to Clare and Munster last year, they'd like to, you know, prove a little point there. Tipperary lost by a couple of points to Galway in the All-Ireland quarter-final, but, you know, in many ways it was a bit of a beatdown, and Tipperary, you know, just weren't able for Galway that day. Both of them would like to lay down a marker in fixtures where they came up short last year.
I think so, yeah. As I said, that's having a certain place in Division 1A is also on the line, so there's maybe a bit more on the line than in previous years. Obviously, as well as I said too, with Tipp and Galway, they're not guaranteed to play each other in the championship, so you can have a right good cut, and yeah, they'll learn a little bit more about you, but it's not somebody that you're definitely going to play in the championship. So I think you can maybe go closer to your starting 15 and take a right good cut, and maybe have employ some tactics or styles that you're planning on using in the Munster Championship, and you don't have as much risk of, you know, the opposition knowing exactly what you're going to do. From a Waterford and Clare kind of point of view, I know Waterford felt hard done by with the sending off last year. Wasn't it Caleb Lyons that got sent off in the first half against Clare, and that could have, like, maybe potentially Watford Championship could have been a good bit different had he stayed on the pitch. I just thought their shot taken and their shot choice was poor that day. But I'm probably expecting 5 of the 6 Division 1 games to be saucy enough now, to be honest with you. It's just Limerick and Westmeath. Realistically, that's going to be, now it's funny, Limerick never put the score on Westmeath like Galway do. It's always a good bit more competitive, but you would expect them to win by double digits. The other 5 games, I would expect them to be really competitive.
Yeah, Dublin go up to Corrigan Park, so like, I think that's a very good test for both teams, because, you know, Antrim had just such a woeful second half against Limerick the other day, losing the second half 120 to 2 points. They'll really, really want reaction in the fourth quarter against Tipperary. Like, Tipperary had 14 shots, scored 2-11. They weren't able to shut them down. After pulling them back close, and Sean Curry had a bit of a half goal chance, they just fell away badly. So that's a good test for both teams there. And because of Westmeath losing by 31 points at home to away to Galway, they really need some sort of performance. Like, what a terrible start to the league for them to have to play Galway and then Limerick, 2 teams who can really fill at you.
It's a disaster of a start, isn't it? Really, I'm sure Joe Fortune has it in his head that he'll hopefully have his best team back for the latter stages of the league. Like, that's just realistic, and try and get them motoring and moving well. for the start of the Joe McDonough realistically, because they do need to get back up straight away. I've been relegated last year, but it's two very demoralising fixtures, you'd say, to start your campaign. And I remember chatting to Michael Verney about this a couple of years ago when he was Offaly manager. And, you know, you win 2A, or obviously Westmeath have been up for a year or two now, but you win it and the euphoria of, yeah, we're promoted, we're playing Division 1 hurling next year. And then all of a sudden you see the fixture lists when they come out and you're like these are so daunting. And it's same from a Westmeath point of view. Anything other than a comprehensive defeat, you'd be very, very surprised.
Yeah, and I think you didn't read out Darren Gleeson's quotes there, did you?
No, just like, and we've kind of said it, you know, a handful of times about the players that they're missing, and I think it's only natural and right to say the players that they're missing, given the class that they're missing. But Darren Gleeson kind of still sees that the glass is half full. He said we have a fantastic selection of players from Dunloy, a fantastic selection of players from all other clubs. It's unfair that the narrative and focus that is constantly on the Dunloy lads, very unfair given the huge commitment over the last few years. I think it's very unfair on the Dunloy lads that are in there now. There's a false narrative out there. You're in a building phase every year and you go at it again. It's just that they're missing Shan Elliott, Ryan Elliott, Keelan Malloy. I don't think Joe Maskey's involved either. McManus is retired. Don Nugent departed as well. It's definitely one more name, I think, as well, that's not involved.
How's it unfair on the Dunloy lads that are in there?
I don't know. I think maybe he's saying that that it looks like, you know, a large cohort of the Dunloy lads have opted out, and it looks, I don't know if people are saying it's bad on them and bad on the club for doing that, but there is a couple of lads still involved, and maybe there's some harsh enough words flying around up there. But again, Antrim got, you know, 1 point in the Leinster Championship when Dublin came up last year to Corrigan Park, probably left one behind. And they've got some great results there the last couple of years. But again, just with the personnel that they're missing, you would definitely be favouring Dublin in that fixture.
Yeah, okay. Some of the other fixtures on this weekend, Downer against Kerry. And Kerry took a bit of a shellacking against Carlow last week, so they'll want to make up for that one. That's in Ballycran. Carlow against Meath. Kildare have a clash.
That's some spin, Shane. Kerry to Ballycran. Doesn't get much longer than that now.
Yeah, I mean, and a 1 p.m. throw-in. Yeah,
I presume they're up the night before. Interesting. Wicklow are going to London. Yeah, this is a
6-hour drive. If you were to go from Tralee to Ballycran, it's a 6-hour drive. 492 kilometres one way.
A grand handy spin. Wicklow are going to London, and they're playing them at 1 p.m. I think it's Saturday, but it's a day trip. Sunday. It's a day trip. So they're getting the first flight out of Dublin Airport on Sunday morning, and then probably getting the last one back. And I don't care. Like I was in Liverpool last weekend, and it's only a half an hour flight, and you'd still be feeling it even after a half an hour flight. So that's a fairly tricky one. And Bosco O'Neill is under pressure there already. They took a fair beating to, or as Hugh Paddy says, a fair shellacking to Donegal last weekend. And London, Wicklow would see London as one of the games maybe here where they can get a result, but I'd have to be putting London as favourites. Like Wicklow are just missing. Like I looked at the team sheet the other day, and just all the regular faces: John Henderson, Pádraig Doyle, Andy O'Brien, Christy Morehouse, David McCormack, all the lads that you'd know, Dermot Masterson. None of them are involved. So it's a real kind of skeleton squad that Jonathan Bosco O'Neill is operating with there.
Yeah, Cavan have Louth this weekend in Division 3A, Armagh against Sligo, Mayo against their visiting Monaghan and Castleblaney. And Cavan actually pushed Sligo pretty hard last weekend. They lost by a couple for a finish, but gave a decent performance there. Division 3B sees Leitrim against Fermanagh and Longford against Warwickshire. Do you want to look at those comments from Kildare chairman Mick Gorman, who's talking about Glen Ryan?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, it was the same last year where Kildare got off to an absolutely terrible start in Division 2, ended up saving their bacon, but they've gotten off to, you know, probably nearly a worse start this year. Who were they beaten by? Cavan beat them comprehensively enough in the first game, and Fermanagh beat them the last day. And the Kildare chairman, Mick Gorman, just came out with a couple of interesting quotes. He said, "I spoke to the management for a long time on Monday about the situation and the necessity that performances and results have to greatly improve. We're fully aware that results are not good enough for the county, and the players and the management are fully aware of the situation. He added, "It is not that everyone isn't fully focused on the thing, but the results speak for themselves." So, yeah, I don't know. This probably heaps more pressure on, to be honest with you. Sometimes I think even if the question is posed to you, sometimes you kind of need to lie low for a little while and hope the storm will be kind of ridden out, because I don't know if that does any good, but us pesky journalists will always make the call and see when somebody make a comment too.
But if you're Glen Ryan, though, wouldn't you be thinking, I'm going to use this to create a siege mentality? No one outside the county believes in us. Even within the county, people are questioning us. Do we have a response? Like, what he as player is going to do?
Well, he needs any sort of an edge he can get at this stage, doesn't he? Any sort of an edge, because they're struggling again, and they have plenty of talent, and they won under-20 All-Ireland last year. Were they beaten in a final a couple of years ago as well, and they won the first under-20. Yeah,
was it Sligo?
They beat Sligo in the final last year. I think Tyrone beat them in a final maybe the year before that, and they obviously won the first under-20 All-Ireland. So, like, we have high hopes of Cork because they've won 3 All-Irelands under-20 in the last 4 years. Like, Kildare have been thereabouts, and they're well off.
So you're telling me that I don't have to worry too much about Cork taking over, because it's only once they take over again I'll realise what a nightmare it was when they were on top.
Yeah, I don't know. The year rivalry with them is obviously fairly intense, so you'll know all about it. Yeah, you'll hear them if they get on top again. Anyway, no, there's no fear of that.
Yeah, okay.
And Meyler will be ringing one of us to come on the show.
Yeah, he will indeed. Okay, I think that's pretty much it from the show again.
Yeah, just an interesting comment. Last one from Crack of the Ash. He just said, JP should have sent some of those counties the donation in slitters and helmets. Maybe they'd have spent even a bit of it on hurling then. Like, there is, I know there was an issue with the hurling helmet scheme as well in some of those counties too as well, where the funding for it was cut as well, and it's a real mess. And that thing I saw in Connacht with the coaching courses is just a bit worrying, and hopefully that's something that will change in the very, very near future.
Yeah, and by the way, if you want to run a coaching clinic, we can bring it to you. events@ourgame.ie, email there, and we'll give you some details about how we can set it up. Same with the coaching clinics and the club fundraisers. That's pretty much it for the show this week. So we'll be back again on Monday, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Well, not that early. It's going to be 12:30 throw-in as usual. We'll be out of bed sometime heading towards 12, and sure we'll tip away at it then with you as we always do. Right, Michael, chat to you later.
Sound channel.